The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, welcome to the What's New in Sigma webinar for the month of October. I see there's quite a bit of attendees and the number is still ticking up, so we're just going to wait a couple more moments, let everybody join in and get settled. We're going to record this session. You'll get an email with a link to the recording afterwards, and as folks are streaming in here, feel free to familiarize yourself with the GoToWebinar interface. We're going to be launching polls throughout the presentation, and then there's also a questions tab where you can ask questions on the fly that I'll either address as the moderator or we'll take care of them in the chat. So just give it a few more seconds. Got quite a few registrants for today's session. All right, looks like attendees are just about leveling off, so we can get into introductions and begin in earnest. This is going to be a real fun session. My name is Zack Norton. I'm the Technical Product Marketing Manager at Sigma. I'll be moderating this session. That means I'll be available in the questions tab, answering any questions that come up as we go. It's going to be a great session with new features for Sigma admins, as well as some fun UI tips and tricks for the average Sigma user. Now, this session is going to be recorded. We're going to follow up with the link afterwards. So if you miss anything or you only catch the first half, you can circle back and rewatch that webinar. And I'm also going to personally reach out for Sigma customers. I have a survey that we'd like our actual customers to respond to. And feel free to give me particularly any feedback or any requests that you would like to see in future webinars through that email directly. But without any further ado, I'm going to hand this off to Jon Avrach, our Senior Director of Solution Evangelism. But all to you, Jon.
All right, do we want to do any polls there first, Zach?
Yeah, let me launch that poll as we get started, just to find out the audience. What is your role in using Sigma? So like I said, we have some features here that are a little bit more admin focused and some others that are a little bit more for business users. So actually, I think we have a pretty good mix here. This is great. So I'll actually share this for the audience, get an idea of some of their contemporaries on the line, just a mix of some admins, BI managers, and some business users. So I think we'll be able to strike a good balance for all these different types of users. All right, Jon, you want to cover the agenda?
Yep, absolutely. So hello everyone, and welcome to the October edition of What's New in Sigma. I appreciate everyone taking the hour today to be with us. For those who have been on this webinar before, you know that we do this around every 6 weeks or so, as Sigma is releasing a lot of new features, and we always want to give a detailed description of what's out there, show you what the feature is, why it matters, and we'll give a demonstration of all these features today. So as Zach mentioned earlier, a little bit more of an admin focus today. So we're going to start off with bulk actions, default account type. Then we hop into the world of joins, talk about non-Equi Joins. You may not have heard of non-Equi Joins before, but that's okay. I will describe what they are. You probably actually need them, and you might not even realize it. So we've added that to the product recently, got a demonstration of that. And then we go into a whole grab bag of UI enhancements. We're always putting little tweaks in there in the visualizations. So let's jump right into it. This is really geared towards admins, but also just good to know what we're doing inside the product at all times here. So bulk actions is two different types of bulk actions. So if you're an administrator, we have this feature called account types. Account types are like roles. You can create custom account types to determine which features different users can access. And previously, we had the ability to assign count types to individual users. Now we have the ability to do that in bulk. So if you want to take 20 users and all give them a certain account type or a role, you can do that in one fell swoop right now. And similarly, if you want to deactivate a whole bunch of users, you can do that by clicking a whole bunch of users and then doing that in bulk. So I'll show you what that looks like. And the benefit of this is it's really just a time savings, because before you would have to go through one by one. Some of our customers have, sometimes they want to do operations on hundreds of users at a time. So this really can save you quite a bit of time. And then the other feature on the admin side is we introduced this notion of a default account type. So when you send out a new invitation, you invite a user into Sigma, they have, when they first log in, they'll have a certain account type associated with them, a certain set of features that they're capable of using. And while you can set that manually, every time you send an invite, you can say this user has this account type. There's now a default account type there. So let's jump right into what the demo looks like here. So we're going to go over to the admin section, and we will start off with account types. So in the admin panel, you can see all the different account types that have been created. We did cover this feature on one of the previous What's New webinars, and we have all these recorded on the website if you want to go back and watch. So at some point we covered off how you can create new account types out there. And in this system, this is our demo system, we've got a dozen or so different account types. And we introduced this new feature up here called the invitation default. So right now it's set to viewer. What that means is if I go over to the people tab and then I invite a new person, the default account type here is viewer. Now I can always change it and override it, but that's what the default is. And if I go back to account types here and change this to creator plus users dashboards, this is also a really common account type I see people create, is they want to give non-admins the ability to see the usage dashboards, the product usage dashboards. And you can do that by creating a new account type where you give someone the usage dashboard privilege. So that is there. So we'll set this as the default. And then when I go to invite a new person, now it automatically has selected creator plus users dashboards. And that is the default account type. And the next set of features are the bulk admin ones. So the way you access these is you go to the people tab here, you'll see a list of all your users. And we made a few tweaks here. So one is on the right-hand side, you can see how many total users there are. There's 274 in the system. And I'll explain what this 50 loaded means in a second. And you'll now see there's check boxes. So I can check users. And as I check them, the count up here is going to change. So let's say we select 5 different users. And now there are 2 new buttons up here. One is to deactivate. So if I click this, it'll deactivate 5 users. And this is for changing the account type in bulk. So if I click this here, I get a window that pops up, and these different users here, which are currently creators and one of them is a viewer, I could change them all to whatever account type I want. And if I hit confirm down there in the lower right, all 5 of these users will get this new account type. So this is the bulk assignment of account types. Now there's also a check all box up here. And when I click check all, it says 50 selected users. Now if I go over to the right, you'll see I have 274 users. So what it's doing is it is going to select all for whatever users are currently loaded. So what does loaded mean? Loaded means, well, we have a caching mechanism here where we kind of load the users as you scroll. So some customers may have thousands of users. We're not going to load all 1,000 when you first click on people, because that would create a slow experience. So we kind of load this on the fly. So as I scroll, you're going to see this number up here is going to change. So I'll just scroll down here. Oops. Scroll again. Now you see it's up to 100. So each time I scroll down, it's on the fly loading 25 new ones. So now it's got 150. And now if I do check all, it's going to show me a number up here. Now, you may say, why doesn't this say 100? Why doesn't this say 150? Why does it say 149? And the answer is because I'm in there, and you can't delete yourself. So if you see the number not adding up, if it's off by 1, that means that's totally expected behavior. So this would allow me to then do a bulk reassignment of 149 accounts if I wanted to do that there. So that is the bulk deactivate and bulk reassignment, and also the account types over here. So let's go into some FAQs here. So one question you may be asking yourself is, well, why do I have to scroll to the bottom? Is there a way which I can just select all these users without having to scroll to the bottom? So this is actually very intentional. We did this for safety reasons because we don't want to make it too easy to deactivate everyone or to reassign everyone's account type. So the scrolling, it's a fairly small amount of work, and it basically is a way for us to do an opt-in to make sure that the administrator is very intentional about what they're trying to do there. And next one is this default account type. This is really useful. Does this work with my single sign-on? So we have our system, maybe you have your system configured so your Sigma authentication is handled through some kind of single sign-on like Okta or Active Directory or One Login. Will this allow me to change the default account type there? This won't, but you can set the default account type for those different single sign-on systems and any SAML provider by using this field called user role, which I have highlighted there in blue. And that's something which is defined in the identity provider. So if you set that to creator or viewer or whatever custom role you want, that's the role that user will get when they log into Sigma. So this is handled outside of Sigma. So this default account type feature that I was just showing is designed for email invitations. And I have a screenshot here on the right of our documentation page. It's quite thorough. It explains how user roles work between your identity provider and Sigma, because you can set them in both locations. So quite a bit of good information there in the online help. So now let's jump into non-Equi Joins. So what is a non-Equi Join, and what are we adding here? So we're adding support for non-Equi Joins in workbooks. And before this, we had the ability to do joins, but we were only doing Equi Joins. So an example of an Equi Join is column A equals column B, or it could be SKU number equals SKU number, customer ID equals customer ID. That's like an equality join. And then there's also a different kind of join where you can put in things like less than or greater than. These are called non-Equi joins. And this is what it looks like on the right-hand side, and I'll show you a demo of this in a second. Now you may be wondering, why would I ever want to use this feature? So there are some really good use cases that I've run across in my years of doing analytics, where these are not only important, but if you don't have them, you can't actually do your use case. So the most common is slowly changing dimensions. So slowly changing dimension, there are different types of them. We're talking about really type 2, if you're familiar with slowly changing dimensions, which is, imagine you have a bunch of transactions, and I'll show you an example of this in a minute, and then you have a product dimension table. And in that dimension table, maybe you have a list of all your product names listed by product SKU. Your product names may change over time, or the prices may change over time. And you may have fields in there like the start date and end date. Like this product was called one name between these dates and was called another name at a later date. Maybe the marketing department decided to change the name. So these types of joins are more complex because you can't just join on the SKU number. You need to also join on the date. And non-Equi joins are designed to do exactly this. And another reason why you might want to use one of these types of joins, this is an interesting use case for if you're doing like clickstream analysis or just really any system where you have users that are doing actions. You could do this on retail data. You could do this on query events or login activity. is this concept of MAU, which is monthly active users. So in the world of web analytics, people will track engagement. They look at daily active users and monthly active users. Daily active users is pretty easy to compute. It's just a unique count of users per day. But monthly active users is actually a rolling 30-day unique count of users, which is much more challenging. So I'm going to show you what this looks like in the demo in just a minute. But non-Equi Joins is the way that you solve this problem. So the benefits here are, without this feature, you may be stuck, or you may be able to do it in Sigma. You can still write SQL, so you always kind of have like an escape hatch, if you will, to harness the power of SQL for any kind of use case. But certainly having this feature native in the product makes it a lot more accessible. So let's take a look at these two different non-Equi Join use cases. So we're going to start off with the one for daily active users and monthly active users. So up here at the top, I have a retail data set. So each row in here is a transaction. It's someone buying a certain product. There's like product information, store information, and so on. And then what I did was I did this ahead of time just to make this a little bit faster, is I went ahead and I created a child table off of this. And that's what this table is right below it, the one that's grouped daily. And this is a pretty basic table in Sigma. What it's doing is we are grouping by the day, and then we're grouping by the customer here, customer key, and then we're counting the number of customer keys per day. So think of this like the number of unique users per day. So daily active users is a pretty basic calculation. Now where it gets interesting is the bottom table here is based off of the DAU table, and this is a self-join using non-Equi Joins. So what do I mean by all this? So if you look at the lower left here, this is what joins look like in workbooks. It says join, and there can be two or more tables involved in the join. And in this case, the two tables are the same table, the DAU table, which is the one that's in the middle here. So we're joining to itself. And let's take a look at how it's built here. So there's those two workbook tables being joined to itself. And the daily active user table is at the day grain. It's already been aggregated. And here is the join condition right here. So we join on date, and this is what we introduced that's new. So before, we didn't have this drop down at all. This is just always an equality join. And now you can say less than or equal to. So we look at the date being less than or equal to the date here, and here look at the day being greater than, and I put a custom formula in here, and the custom formula is doing a 30-day look back. So what this allows us to do is, for each day, we are looking back 30 days. And this is why we call it a 30-day rolling windows. That's what monthly active users is. So for each day, we look at the last 30 days and we count the number of distinct users. So if you're familiar with like windowing functions, this is a lot like a moving function. It's like a moving count distinct, except moving count distincts don't exist in the SQL world. There's moving counts, but there are not moving count distincts. So this is the way to solve that problem. And the net result of it is the table you see down here at the bottom. So for each day, like here's January 1st, we had the daily active users, and then we look back 30 days and see for the last 30 days how many monthly active users. Now this data set is filtered for 2021. So January 1st is the first day of this data, and if you go back 1 month, it's just 1 day. That's why these two are equal. And as we go forward in time, it's looking back here, it's looking back 30 days, but there's really only 2 days of data. That's why you see this number increasing. And eventually after 30 days, the number kind of plateaus. So if we pick any random date down here, like let's say 2/27, with 89 active users on that day, and in the last 30 days relative to this one, there are 917 unique users. So pretty complex problem, but quite easy to solve now using non-Equi Joins. So prior to this, it was not easy to do this. Next use case is slowly changing dimensions. So this is that example of the product information is changing over time. So up top, again, we have our retail transaction table, and I have filtered it out to just show one product with this SKU right here. And then I have a dimension table at the bottom of product prices. So for this product SKU, there are different prices depending on the date. So this is why they call it a slowly changing dimension. So over time, this table down here at the bottom will have new rows inserted as the price changes. This could also be like the name of the product is changing. And then you'll see there's a start date and end date. So these dates do not overlap. They go from 9/22 to 9/25, the product had a price of $10.21. From 9/25 to 9/27, a price of $14.43, and so on. So these are all kind of like adjacent ranges. And then what we do is we join in the price information from the bottom into the top table using a non-equi join. So let's take a look at what that join looks like. And here's our join condition. So the join condition here is the SKU is equal to the SKU. That's an equi join. And then the non-equi join part is the last two parts, which is we're looking at the date in the transaction table being between the start date and end date of the slowly changing dimension table. So what happens is for a given row, like up here, this product was bought on October 4th. And if we go down to the table down below, and we look where October 4th is, what falls onto this one down here at the bottom, the purple one, where it says 1703. So then we get a price of 1703 up here at the top. So that's why the prices are different depending on the transaction date we join to a different row in the dimension table. And this is what a non-equi join is capable of doing. Otherwise, it would return multiple rows if we just joined on the SKU alone. Okay, so that covers non-equi joins. And let's take a look at the questions we get asked here. So a lot of people use data sets. Data sets are a great way in Sigma to do data modeling, to do things like joins ahead of times and materializations and pre-computing formulas and filtering data. So the question is, are non-equi joins available in data sets? So unfortunately, they're not available in data sets, so they're only available in workbooks, but we are working on a solution for this. You may have heard me allude to this in the past. So kind of just hang tight here, and we will have a way to kind of take all the goodness of data sets and bring it into the workbooks world. So a bit of a large solution, but we are working on this right now. Okay, so let's jump over to the last section of the webinar, which is going to be about new UI enhancements. So a whole bunch of just miscellaneous things which we've added to make the UI experience better. And no slides for this one, we just go right into demonstrations. We've got 5 different features to show you here. The first one is on resizing columns. So one of the things we do at Sigma is we make a product which is easy to use for people that are used to using spreadsheets. You have a lot of knowledge from working with spreadsheets over the years, Excel and Google Sheets. You kind of expect it to work a certain way. So I think on the last webinar, we covered some features like the cell highlighting or the cell summaries down here at the bottom. We covered this one last time. This is one of the examples of the Excel-like things that we do here. If you want to highlight a bunch of prices, you'll see it sums them and gives you some statistics. But what we want to talk about today is column sizing. So you can select multiple columns in a table a few different ways. You can click on a column header. Now I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to hold the Command key down. If you're on Windows, you can hold the Control key down. And then you can Command click on different columns here. So now I've highlighted these 4 different columns, and they're not next to each other. And then you can resize these, and it's going to resize them all to be the exact same size. So it feels just like a spreadsheet, and that is on purpose. And another thing you can do is you can double click on one of these dividers, and it will auto size all the columns that have been highlighted. And similarly, you can do shift click. So you can click on that one there, click on, then hold shift key down, click on another column, and then resize all of these at one shot. You can also do this for formatting. So if I take the cost and price column here, I can format them all at the same time as a currency by clicking on the $sign up there. So that covers resizing multiple columns. Next feature is around exporting. So a lot of our customers will export to PDFs. We're always making little tweaks in the PDF exporter. And the latest one is we've added landscape and portrait mode exporting directly from the page option down here at the bottom. So if you go to the page, if I want to export the whole thing as a PDF, I can now say PDF and do it directly to portrait mode. And if you've used our export before, you'll see there was a short delay there. That's by design, because what's happening when you do an export is Sigma is queuing it up in the back end as a job, and the job gets picked up eventually. We also have to run that query again. And another place where we have this PDF export is in the download menu. So if I want to download this visualization as landscape, I can click on that there. So that's getting queued up in the back end. And let's take a look at the PDF, which I exported a minute ago. So there's the portrait mode for the entire page with my map and my line chart. And okay, there we go. Now the map is ready. Click on the map there. And this is our landscape export of just the map. So that covers off the export shortcuts. And now we're going to move on to date filtering. Now, date filtering is a very powerful feature in Sigma. You can do relative date filters, like I want to see the last 3 weeks, the last 4 months, the current year to date. And these are concepts what we call relative date filters. These are very useful if you always want to see the last 30 days and have a sliding date window, have it always be relative. You can set those things up. You can also set up alerts on relative date windows. I'll show you that in the next demo after this. But let's look at the date filter. So this isn't new functionality, but it's a new user interface. We've had this relative date filtering for quite some time. I'm going to make this date column into a page control. And what's new here is when I click on the drop down to filter, you'll see that if I want to do like a last filter now, we made some tweaks here. So I can say last 14 days or maybe last 30 days. And we've also added this include today option. So it just makes it a little bit easier to get the last 30 days plus today. And you'll see there's a little bit of feedback here at the top. So we give you an English description along with the actual date range that it's using. Similarly, we could go and say, I want to see everything before September 1st. And as I'm clicking these, you can look at the row counts down here at the bottom. Try to use in the same view here. So right now I have 4.6 million rows. And if I change this to be before September 2nd, you'll see that row count will keep changing there each time. So these are the before filters right now. We also have like current period ones. You might want to do year to date, let's say. Let's do the current month. And then we also have like month to date. You could do year to date, so just this year, last year. And then if you want to really open it up and then do the full custom option, this is the power user interface. You can do fixed and relative, and pretty much any date scenario you can possibly imagine are right here. I generally use, probably the most common one I use is the last few days, or I'll use the current one to do things like current year, or I'll do it last quarter. So we made these a little more accessible there. Next, we're going to move on to scheduling. If you've been on these webinars before, you probably have heard me talk about scheduling quite a bit. I think this is one of the the great features of the product, which seems kind of basic at first, but it opens up a whole bunch of use case like doing alerting. So I'm going to show you an example of that. So we take our retail table here, and we're going to add a new summary field to compute gross margin. So we'll do our sum of profit divided by sum of cost. This creates a summary for the entire table, and we'll format it as a percent, and we'll make this one, we'll call it gross margin. So one use case may be that I want to set up an alert that says if my gross margin is, if it drops below a certain value for the last 7 days, I want to be notified about it. And Sigma can do this quite well. So now we've got our gross margin. You can create whatever calculation you want to do what I'm about to show you here. And then we're going to add a date control, basically what we did on the last page there. Convert this to a page control. And we'll call this our margin date, just so we know the name of it there. And we'll go up to the scheduler. So on the workbook menu, there's scheduled exports. And there are a lot of features here to create a new schedule. And the new feature that we're doing, that we just introduced, is the schedule name at the very top. Previously, we just didn't have this box there. So you could, every other option was there. You could create a schedule. But what happened is you can create lots of schedules on a workbook, and it can be confusing to know what the actual schedule does. So here we have a name field. We'll call this one the low margin alert. And you can see there's a variety of ways to do the schedules or do the alerts here. You can do, we're going to do email today, but you can also do like Slack integration. So you can have this, if it gets alerted, you can post this to Slack. You can even post it to a webhook to do some external API integrations. And you can set up how often you want the schedule to run. This is going to be an alert. So we'll do it once a week on Sunday morning. And then you can also put in a custom control. So there's the margin date control. And what this allows us to do is we'll use our, what we just learned a second ago, the last one, is we'll say in the last 7 days. So this is going to run on Sundays at 9 a.m. Every Sunday at 9 a.m. it's going to run. It'll wake up. It'll filter on the last 7 days of data, and it's going to check a condition to see, select our table there, if the gross margin is less than 1.2. So 1.2, this is a percentage. So 1.0 would mean 100%, 1.2 would be 120%. So we can see if any value in the gross margin, in this case is just one value, is less than 1.2. And if that happens Sunday 9 a.m. for the last 7 days, if this condition is true, then the alert will be sent out. So you can imagine there is quite a bit of flexibility in the kinds of alerts that I can do here. And what's new here is we now have a name for the alert. So previously, I would just have the condition there, and you couldn't actually tell what it was. And you see there's a new schedule button here. So you can create lots and lots of schedules. We have some customers that have dozens of schedules on a given export, checking for all kinds of conditions being true. So this helps you manage them better. And then you can also do a test. You can do a send now, and you can also pause this one. So we'll delete that schedule for now. And then for those who are curious, if you're creating lots of schedules, there is also a usage dashboard. If you're an admin, that will show you all the different schedules. So if you have access to usage dashboards, you can go over to here, and you can go over to schedule exports, and it will show you the complete history of all the schedules that have been going on. So you can see what emails have been sent out. You can see the status of all these different tasks that are out there. Okay, we're gonna go on to the last one here. I think we will actually wrap this up a little bit early today, give you a few minutes back. We're gonna cover gauge charts. So we've had gauge charts for a bit of time now in the product. And what we are introducing in this release is the ability to do conditional formatting on the gauge chart. So we have this feature of conditional formatting. You saw it a few minutes ago at the column level. So you can always do things like, let's say if you want to color code a certain column here, like the cogs, you can do some conditional formatting. So we've had this on tables for quite a while now. And what we're doing is we're slowly adding this to all the different visualizations that are out there. So we've added them to bar charts, and now we've added to gauge charts. So here's a gauge chart I had down here at the bottom. And if you haven't played with gauge charts before, they're really nice ways to show you the progress towards a goal. So what we have here in the gauge chart configuration is there's a maximum number here, about about $1.5 billion. And then we have the current revenue number, which is about $768 million. And then we also have a line here, which is the target, in this case, the target profit. So we have three numbers. We have the maximum, the actual value where the pointer is pointing, and then we have a target number. And these are all configured over here in the left. There's our value. The minimum I left blank. This is optional. If you omit it, it'll just default to 0. And then we set up a maximum value, and then we also have that target value there. So what you can do now with conditional formatting is you can add rules. So we're going to add a new rule. And what this is going to do is it'll put colors inside the gauge chart. And you can do this based on an absolute value, like a number of dollars, or we can do it based on percentage. So I'm going to do it based on a percentage. And we're going to compare it. You can compare it to the maximum of the target. We'll compare it to the target value, which is this thin black line right here. And we'll say when the value is below the target, which is basically less than 100%, then give it a color of, let's call it red if you're below 100%. And then we'll add a new rule, and we'll say if the percentage is greater than the target, greater than 100%, then we'll have it as green. So there we can see right now that our line right here, 768 million, is pointing into the green. We've exceeded our goal. And you can add as many of these rules as you want. You can mix and match them, so they can be based on the absolute dollars and percentage values, and they'll kind of evaluate in the order that you see here on the left. You can also turn off the colors here if you like. And that is gauge charts there. So that ends the scheduled content we have here. Zach, were there any questions that came in that we should cover off now?
Well, I saw some excitement for non-equi joins, non-equi joins for the win. I think that pricing example where the price changes, the way that you were able to verify that for one SKU, just do some data sanity checks, and then you could potentially unfilter for that SKU and then see it for 1,000 SKUs. So my favorite thing about Sigma is that it demonstrates SQL working by having the UI on top of it. So a lot of excitement for that. And I think it was 3 months ago, or maybe just 2, somebody was looking for scheduled exports on one of these sessions. So I don't know if they're on the line here today, but we listened. We have the scheduled export names, and maybe they'll get a recording of this and hear that shout out. I think that's one of our polls. I'm gonna also launch one more for how folks like to hear about new features. Wait to see if any other Q&As come in. The only last thing, John, this isn't a little side topic, but one of the questions was if somebody creates a custom account type, can they provision a user in Okta to that custom account type? Or is the Okta integration only limited to default account types?
Oh yes, that's an excellent question. I actually haven't tested that, but my intuition about the way the feature works is it should work for custom account types, because what we're doing is we're taking that user role field from the identity provider and we're passing it into our account type. So although I haven't tested it, I suspect it will work with any account type that you create there.
Okay, and we're getting some feedback that everybody enjoys these webinars for finding out new features, but they'd also like emails with details, and that's something we should take into consideration. And the in-product notifications are popular. One last question is there a way to put a page filter value into the title of a page or text section?
Say it again. Is there a way to put a filter value into a text, for example?
Yeah, into like the title of a page or in a text section. So let's say, I think the request would be, I have a filter on last 30 days, and it would be nice to have be able to refer to that filter, like the way that we can build dynamic text for other values.
Definitely. So let's take a look at this here. If I understand correctly, we have a filter on last 14 days. Let's say it's a page control, so anyone who's viewing this can look at this thing here. And then maybe we want to say in some text like what they're actually seeing here. So one of the features I use this all the time. Dynamic text is a great feature. So we could say something like showing, just kind of do this on the fly here. We can do a date diff, and we can compute this on units of days, the start date being the min date here. There's my, let's just call this the date column here. So we should be able to reference this here. Oh, why isn't that working? Oh, I know why. I know what's going on here. So let's just call this, let's give us a unique name. You got to put a table name in here. So if we do like TT and then date. Oh, let's try this again here. There we go. Always fun to do things live here. So we can do like a date diff and then do a day, and then we could do like min on this guy here. And then we'll just copy this whole one here. And we could do max here. Hopefully this should give us a value. There we go, 13 days. So boundary condition, that's okay. And so we could say showing this number of days, for example, and then we could put this wherever we want, and then format this however there. And then you'll see there's a bubble here for the dynamic text, but this will go away once you explore it there. So as you change this now, the text up here will automatically change. Okay, there we go, right there. So hopefully that answered the question for the person that was watching. Zach, those are some good questions. Did anything else come in there?
Related to filters, can we pass filters across tabs within the same workbook? So I have a date filter on tab 1. Can that also apply to something on tab 2?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so when you're using filters, here's our page control here. So we call filters that are kind of exposed on the page. And there's a target section right here. And then the targets say, when I change this filter, what's it going to filter on? And you can have this target wherever you want. So if you want to target a different table on a different page, you can just select it, and that's it. And it'll automatically find the columns that's matching it on data type. I only have one date column, so it just automatically finds it. And now when I change this, I go to the other page, it'll just automatically filter on it. Yeah, so really the different pages, doesn't matter what page they're on, you can always access it. Same thing with the dynamic text. That's why when I was typing in the dynamic text, I had to put the table name in there. I gave it a unique table, just so I can find it, because I have so many tables in here. But the dynamic text can refer to data. You could have one text element refer to data that goes across different pages in the workbook if you wanted to. So these dynamic text elements are almost like their own visualization type in some ways. Yeah, those are great questions. Any more that came in there?
Is there a way to share or duplicate a tab to a different workbook? kind of similar to Google Sheets.
Yeah, that's a great one. I actually need that one for one of my own use cases I'm working on right now. So not yet, but that is something that we are working on. We have an experimental feature right now where you can copy individual workbook elements, like a chart or a table, from one workbook to another. And we are investigating things like reusable, what we call reusable elements, a way to take an element from one workbook and reference it in another workbook. And we're also considering, not committed yet, but considering having like a copy feature on a page, which would allow you to take one page and just duplicate it into another workbook. So I can definitely see the value of it. So I would say just hang tight. We hear you. We have the same pain, and there should be a way to do this in the near future.
All right. So I think that's it. We have an engaged audience today. Can we just bring up maybe the next upcoming?
Yep.
There's our help desk, poll, Q&A, and coming up next, we have another session on embedded analytics. We have a whole new portal set up to be able to demonstrate how unique we are with embedded analytics, and there is a virtual hands-on lab coming up on October 25th. So I'll be sending out an email that will contain a recording of this session. And for folks that are already Sigma customers, I'm going to be reaching out directly with a quick survey. And feel free to shoot me any kind of feedback or any follow-up questions directly to that email I'll be sending out to folks individually. But thank you all for hopping on. Hope to see you soon on that embedded analytics, embedding via iframe.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for joining today.